spaces and names, if we want to talk about property, start to kind of align with this as well, right?
Digital identity.
So digital identity, and we talked, I think, a little bit about in the prior episodes. It's like, there's like domain names, which what we kind of tend to use in the cyberspace are in some sense controlled by other entities that are beyond what we can control or might not act in our interests. Hasn't happened so much for the most part yet, but that potential is there. And Spaces Protocol really kind of tries to fit this need of like, how do we name things and give them a name, and such that that name effectively becomes property, right?
Yeah.
So think of it like, intellectual property has different aspects, but like if you have the patent on something, there's nothing you can kind of like, hold in your hand, but you have legal protection in certain respects for that invention, right? That patent. And that's worth something. That's like, that is property in the eyes of the law, in taxation, and that is worth, something that can be valued. And names, in my mind, are similar. That can, you build up brand. I mean, think Nike, Coca-Cola, the things that when you hear their name, you're associating, experience and reputation and trust, potentially, right? So if you think, Wells Fargo, what do you think of? Think of Stagecoach. You think, they're trusted. They're my bank. I go there. I've used them for my whole life, and they've always been there for me. When I needed to get a loan for my house, they were there, and that's that relationship. So that's pretty powerful. That there's a brand there, right? And I think when we look at the Spaces Protocol, the thing that we want to really first associate is like, here's names, and they come from kind of nowhere, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But the right to that property of that name is directly stored on Bitcoin, so it can't be changed, right? So that's one of the most important sort of things to think of first when learning about Spaces Protocol. It's
a huge thing.
With
the eminent domain, they allow you to keep it until they take it away. Same thing with the DNS, the domain names. They allow you to use it until they take it away. Bitcoin is the ultimate ledger, the ultimate proof that you own something where no one can take it away from you. You see people talking about their kids were born, this was done, at this block height, the business was established at this block height. Bitcoin is going to be the system of record, the system of proof, the timestamp, the data stamp. As long as it's not crazy high, we're in this middle period where we have to figure out how much data is acceptable. Op return is prunable, 83 bytes. Where are we going to go? Where are we going to land with this whole, I don't know if it's like Block Wars 2.0 with the spam wars, I guess they're calling it. You don't like JPEGs and mindless, stupid images on there. You can go down a different route with that. Who's to decide if it's stupid or useful or not? That's another question. But I could see us compromising somewhere in the middle and realizing that putting things on Bitcoin is extremely valuable. Putting too much data on Bitcoin could be dangerous and a potential problem. So, where do we land on that? Somewhere in the middle. Hopefully everyone could be smart enough and we don't get a chain split fork Bitcoin, but we might.
Well, there's potential there, and I think that gets everybody a bit anxious.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that needs to just kind of find its level, and I feel very confident that no matter how it turns out, Spaces Protocol is still going to operate and be sound going forward. So we're gonna work on that premise that there's nothing that's going to come out in the near term that's going to be a roadblock to implementing Spaces protocol. No. So
even
maybe we should talk.
Even NOTs.
Yeah,
it's still compatible with Spaces protocol. So I think we're pretty good no matter where the fork goes. But yeah, I'd hate to see a fork, because then half the community goes off into the one chain. It just weakens the network, I think. Weakens the people. Or maybe it strengthens it. Yeah. Maybe it makes it more resilient. It could go either way.
Well, we'll just have to see and see where it goes. But so yeah, we're kind of bouncing around. But one of the things I wanted to just impress is that that self-sovereign, that control, and like how you attain it. What are those qualities? So let's talk more about Spaces. So I'm sure folks that are coming across these videos are probably just interested. Like, you guys keep talking about these other things, but tell me more about Spaces. So maybe I'll share my screen.
Sure.
Here, and we looked at this last time. So this is the main website, spacesprotocol.org, and it's a really good resource for understanding more about Spaces protocol. But I think today what we're going to talk a little bit about is the top level, we commonly call the top level names, and how you go about getting them, what was kind of behind the thought process. Hopefully we're going to have maybe some guests join us that maybe can add a little more color to this in future episodes. But for now, let's kind of like lay the groundwork, right? So when you, if you go to Spaces protocol, just to kind of reiterate, it's empowers users with sovereign Bitcoin identity, anchored, and this is the important part, anchored securely on the Bitcoin blockchain. And what does that mean? That means that the top level names are actually represented by unspent transaction outputs, UTXOs, that live in specially formed transactions on the blockchain. So there's no going back and changing it once it exists there. And there's some more attributes here, but let's focus on this. So first I'll click on the paper and maybe the docs later. But if you go on the white paper, there's a bit of discussion about the motivations behind it. But if you scroll down here, you get into the thoughts of like, how are these things constructed, and talks a little bit about how this is like similar to Nostr and other things, Bitcoin, where it's controlled through public keys, and a little bit more about some of the background. But let's look at this a little bit, because I think this is where most people's kind of that are unfamiliar with this kind of start getting like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? So the Spaces protocol names themselves are of this form. Stuff to the left of an @ sign, and then stuff to the right of an @ sign. And the @ sign itself was, arbitrary. I'm not part of the core team. Jason's not part of the core team, but we interact with those guys pretty regularly. And I'm not sure why that the @ sign was chosen. It kind of makes it look like an email address without some dot something over here, in which case you wouldn't be able to even distinguish it from an email address. But you needed some separator. I guess they could have used a colon or a tilde or something else. I think it does kind of from just how you read it, Bob at Bitcoin here, is kind of flows, and people, it's a certain amount of familiarity that people have. So the stuff to the right, anything here, and it can be anything. It can be a long or short, but it can't have a dot in it. Can't have weird characters, hyphens in. Well, it can have hyphen. We'll talk about that maybe a little bit, but not all characters are allowable. But it's really not limited by length.
Is there a place where we can find out? So hyphens are allowed? I didn't know that. A special character?
Well, right. right? The CUNY codes don't they have
yeah.
hyphens?
But they don't show as hyphens. So they're showing as
but I think
emojis.
right. But that's an interpretation of the XN dash dash code.
Okay, so
right?
dashes
We're
are
talking
allowed.
about.
I wonder if there's a list. Is there a list you know of anywhere?
I think I remember seeing it somewhere. If not, it's probably in the code. Hey, because remember, this stuff's all open source, so you can go look at it on the GitHub, and the main page has links to the GitHub site, so you could always look at that. But okay, great. Like, so say Jason's like, you're going to be cute. It's like, I'm going to get Nike. Let's just say, let's pick something that the first thing a lot of folks are going to say, hey, I'll get Nike. And then when Nike finds out that this is really cool and all the kids are doing it, they're going to want to buy it from me and I'll sell it for $1 million. Right. Maybe,
which is definitely
I don't know. I'm not. Yeah, I don't know what that is. Now, you have to remember too, there's no authority involved here. There's no person that says, "Oh, I see somebody trying to get Nike, and I'm not going to allow that." There is nobody. The protocol, and that's the beautiful thing about protocols, right? There's no authority. There's no company. There's no personality. There's no arbitrator. There's no, entity that lives in the United States or lives in Europe or has, falls under some jurisdictional sort of like, legal framework that dictates this stuff. If you want Nike and Nike's available, then you can get Nike. Now, that being said, it doesn't insulate you from legal challenge, right? So if I say, I'm going to get Nike and then I'm going to resell it, try to sell it to the Nike, the corporation. Of course, Nike's a Greek god too, right? So it's like, you could just say, well, hey, I like Nike, the Greek god. And that's why I chose Nike. So, the fact that you made a silly shoe company, with the same name is not my fault. Okay, great. You both have a position about who owns it legally, but, who's got trademark lawyers, right? Yeah. They've got trademark lawyers. So yeah, just because you can get something, and I think it's an important point to make, just because you can get something doesn't mean you have legal clear trademark or use of it in even an internet sort of capacity. So I'm not a lawyer, but I've dealt with enough intellectual property stuff to kind of know that these things exist and that it's just like, now, it's not just the Wild West here, right?